lounging, son.
Welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and back with me today, one of my favorite indie cartoonists. I got J Royale with me, and we're going to be going through Dishoom #1, one of my favorite books. I mean, this came out in 2020, so this is long overdue. I mean, we've talked about it, but we haven't gone through it, so I'm excited to do this. This is a new, creator commentary series I'm going to be doing on Comic Lounge. So I'm so stoked to have you with me, Sam.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
I mean, we talked about it before, but maybe let's talk a little bit about like how this project first started for you.
Yeah, sure. First though, I always gonna like start with defining Dishoom just for the uninitiated, just to make it clear. Dishoom is an example of onomatopoeia used as an action sound effect in Indian cinema, like bang or pow, and so that's where the title comes from. It's just kind of a nonsense word for action. Where the project came from was I got a little insecure in my mid to late 20s about turning 30 and not having anything to show for it in terms of body of work. Because it was just one of those things like I took for granted. Like one day I will have self-published a comic book. One day I'll have this book done. It'll be an anthology. And then it just kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed. And so I set a goal for myself that like by the time I turned 30, I would definitely have my first book done. And I didn't actually get it done until I was 34. But, at least it got done.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a great book, dude. So we're the same age then for sure. I mean, this is if that's what you did in 2020, and I think that a lot of people like when we get to that age too, and like especially like I feel like we're for the most part we're just told to like keep pushing and like keep working, for lack of a better way, or like sometimes we're like going after certain dreams is not like maybe the main motivation for people at all times. They're like, oh, that's a kid thing. But I love that you don't let go of that and that you did create something really cool. And I think that like the mixed media thing is what I really dig about your art, because I could give you a box of crayons from the Dollar Tree or the 99-cent store and you'll create some dope art with it.
Oh, I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
There is some crayon in here, and it's mostly colored pencil, but I don't use anything fancy. It's a lot of Crayola on computer printer paper, and then like for some of the other, we'll get to it as we flip through the book. But yeah,
let's get into this. So this is it's a one-man anthology, which is I think important for everybody to know. It's not one continuous story; it's multiple stories throughout.
Right, and I kind of cheated a little by calling it an anthology. That was just to give myself lower pressure. It is an anthology, but they are all connected in the same universe, and you'll see more of that as more and more books come out. You already get hints of it in the second book, where you do see some old stuff from issue 1 come back. So I guess you would just call it like its own universe of different short stories, like a quilt. Like each short story is like a patch on a quilt, I guess.
Well, let's talk about Black Tortoise, White Rabbit.
Sure.
I love this one. So what's the like impetus behind this? What was this kind of story?
So I used to stay up a lot and paint, and when I would do that, I would listen to a lot of podcasts, a lot of audiobooks, and I like went through this phase back in like 2015 where I was listening to a lot of Eastern philosophy, and I was learning a bit about Taoism, and somehow like at 3 a.m. it made sense to connect the yin and yang to the tortoise and the hare. And so I wanted to put a spotlight on that kind of dual nature of our universe, and I wanted to make it a point to make it dark and light rather than dark versus light. And there's a number of juxtapositions here, like if you turn the page, there will be dark, light, black, white, life, death, creation, destruction, but it never says good or evil, because that doesn't really factor into it for me here. It's funny, like I got a faulty memory because I somehow remember all of this being strictly digital art, and then I was looking I have like this binder here of all the original art from issue 1, and I found like actual like painted pages, like the title page here was done by hand. I didn't even remember doing that. It was a few years ago,
Yeah.
And then like there's like some ink wash stuff that I just
that looks great, dude.
Thanks. Yeah. So it's just funny.
Well, it's got like definitely like a poeticness to this, the way, I mean, I can't think of the specific type of poetry that I'm thinking when I read it, but it has that kind of feel to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like I think a lot about cadence and rhythm and flow when creating these things. And like this, it's kind of even funny to call Black Tortoise White Rabbit a story because there's really no narrative.
Mhm.
It's just a description of these dual forces. So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
phenomenal, dude.
I guess poetic's a good word.
Then you got the Sword of Chandra.
Mm-hmm.
Love this one too. See, like that's what I love about it, is like you literally you go from something like this, and then it looks a little bit more traditional in terms of like
Yes.
comic book art, like that was definitely something very unique and of it. And I mean it's crazy, dude. I mean, this having to jump, not having to, but like choosing to jump back and forth between styles, like that's got to be like super fun for you because it keeps everything fresh.
It definitely keeps it interesting. But another reason why I wanted to do it was it helped me experiment with keeping less pressure on myself, because if I'm doing short stories, each short story just has to be consistent with itself.
Mhm.
The next story could be totally different and it's okay. And so I have that freedom to try a different style. And since this was my first book, I wanted to try as much as I could to see what I liked best. And so you said that this looked more traditional, and that was by choice. I thought, can I even do like traditional inking and digital coloring, and like, can I make it look like what we're used to seeing comic books look like? And over the course of working on this book, I found trying to do traditional looking work is just as time consuming for me as doing like a mixed media or painted book. So you're probably going to see less and less of this style unless it's really, really appropriate for the story. But this was kind of a fun learning experience. This whole story, it's like every other page is a different way of inking. Like that first page on the left with Chandra, the moon god, that splash page, that was a quick digital painting that I did just because I needed a filler page to fix the flow of the book. And then the page on the right there, that's all inked in Photoshop and then colored with Photoshop, but there's some watercolor texture on there. Something I was looking a lot
Okay,
at
right
was,
here in the
yep,
sky. Okay.
the sky and all of it, like, is just overlaid on top. And those He-Man mini comics, Masters of the
Yes.
Universe?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the big jumping off point visually for this story. It's really cool, like how like Bruce Timm and Stan Sakai, like all these like big name people like started with those mini comics. And one thing I don't think that gets talked about enough with those comics is the coloring by Charles Simpson. And I think it was Uncle Jerk. Yeah, he's got his channel. I was talking to him and he told me that they did those with marker just to like save time and make them cheap. But like because of that, like they end up looking like nothing else. And so like it kind of became a selling point, even though they were just doing it to cut costs. So yeah, that's like a lot of where the color palette and stuff in the story comes from.
So this one's all digital then.
No, well, that page was all digital. I like
Okay.
change it up from page to page. So like this one, even the second page, that top panel, the wolves on the right, the werewolves on the right was drawn on an envelope. And then like the character on the left was digital and they're in the same panel. And then the sword was done in Illustrator. So it's like all over the place. It's funny, but like the main character of the story doesn't have a name in this book because I couldn't decide on how I wanted to spell it. His name is Moondog. It gets revealed in issue 2. And I
Hmm.
didn't know if I wanted to make it all one word, Moondog, or if I wanted to hyphenate it. And ultimately I landed on hyphenating it. But that's the reason why he doesn't actually have a name revealed in the story. And I was worried, like, oh, people are going to start calling him Chandra. It never happened. Thankfully, people all figured out, like, they were able to keep that straight. So
Yeah.
I'm really impressed by by people there.
Yeah, I mean it's funny because like you think about what, especially you said with the hyphen, like if you take the hyphen out of Spider-Man, it's Spider-Man, like
Right.
so you got to be careful in terms of like what your name is. But yeah, dude, I haven't seen, I mean I know of the Masters of the Universe comics, but now I got to go check them out. I've never actually seen them in person.
Yeah, I forget who put it out. Someone put out like a hardcover collection of all of them.
Oh, I
Like, and
think was it on like Etsy or something like that?
I don't know. It might have. I think it was like an actual like released published thing,
Oh,
like
okay.
a collected book of all the mini comics, and it was just really nice to look at. I don't have a copy, but I did get the opportunity to look at it briefly, and it looks like it's worth the money.
Right on. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out because I know that I've seen like people collecting, and they made a hardback. It looks like professionally made, but like those
Yeah.
mini comics from like the DC Super Friends stuff, like they collected all those things, those mini
Oh,
comics. So I don't know if maybe that's the same person or not, but I'll definitely be on the lookout for that. This was one of my favorite stories, though. I love I love
Oh,
this one, dude.
sorry. Can we go back one page real
Oh
quick?
yeah, yeah.
As this is kind of funny. So on the right there, there's a naked. Well, there's two different werewolves, but they're both naked. And I was doing this in a vacuum. Like no one was looking at anything I was doing. I wasn't showing my friends. I wasn't showing anybody. Just working on this book for years. And it made sense at the time. Didn't think anything of it. Yeah, the werewolves are naked, and you can see their penis. And then when the book was done, and I finally got like the proof mailed to me, my mom texts me. She's like, "Hey, I can't wait to see your book." And it was like that's when it finally hits me, like 7 years later. Like, oh yeah, people are gonna see, like including my mom, they're gonna see the werewolf penis here. So yeah, I felt a little funny about that for a minute, but I got over it.
So this started in 2013 for you?
I don't remember. It's like, oh, gosh, it all blurs together. It
Because
was
because you have a full-time job. So what's like the time frame in terms of like creating each story? Because obviously, like, are you doing a page at a time when you have the free moment? Are you doing a story and then kind of putting it to the side? Like, how did that come about with this? Like, how long did this particular story take you?
it honestly, everything in the first book was a mess because it took years in that, like, I started it probably in 2011 in some form.
Oh, wow,
And
okay.
then because I know that because I remember I lived in Pennsylvania at the time, and then I moved to New York, and then like I really got into it after moving to New York, and so I was like in 2012. But then what happened was like I was maybe halfway done with this story, and someone offered me a coloring job to do like background paintings and coloring for their comic, and that ended up taking like 2 years, and so that took 2 years right off of this project, and so it's like I would do a page and then there'd be like 6 months and then I'd do another page. And so it was really bad. The second issue I put out start to finish in like a year and a half. But the first book took years, like 7 years or so, start to finish, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this page here on the left, that's all traditional inking, like actual ink on paper. I did digital blue pencils and then traditionally inked it. And same with the page on the right. So there's a lot of experimentation. Like the page prior to this was like inked in Illustrator. The one before that was inked in Photoshop.
Mhm.
So I was just experimenting with everything I could possibly play with, and like, let's see what works best for me. And then if I find something I really like, I'll stick to that for the rest of the book or all my books, or maybe I'll just keep experimenting. I hadn't really made up my mind about anything yet at this point.
I think that's the joy of the work though, is that like because you're doing it probably not consecutively, like you're not working on it within even a story, you're experimenting. And that
Right.
kind of that's interesting to hear, and it's interesting to look at too, because it does give it a very unique feel because it doesn't feel like I said, from one story to the next, but like even to hear that within the story you're doing different stuff is pretty interesting.
Well, part of it was just to see what I could get away with too. It's like as long as the coloring is consistent, I thought no
Yeah.
one will notice if I'm switching inking completely. And I think it still feels pretty cohesive because the color palette is fairly strict in this story.
Yeah, it does. Like I wouldn't even have known if you didn't tell me that.
We have
Love
another
it. I
naked
love this
werewolf
one.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the model for that wolf was speaking of Masters of the Universe, that was a Prince Adam action figure. And I did a watercolor painting on copier paper, which I don't recommend because it wrinkled up and shriveled up into nothing like 5 minutes after, but I was able to get a photo of it and then digitally paint on top of it. And that's where that picture came from. And it was just,
That,
it's something I stole from Ashley Wood, Ashley Wood, like
of
Pop
course,
Pop,
yeah.
all that. Yeah, I love his stuff. And
Yeah.
I loved how like there would be these quick inked pages with very minimal color, and then you turn the page, and then all of a sudden there's like a full page painting, oil painting he would do, and like, and it would be something that I thought it'd be like this is the moment in the story to emphasize the moment of high drama, it's a good beat to rest on for a second. So that's where that came from.
It's funny now that you say the action figure, like now I see it because those action figures barely had any articulation. So they have that
Right.
same like pose, like where you can't really do anything with it. That's funny, dude.
The legs totally give it away. That squat is just like
Yeah, the squad, dude. Yeah.
yeah. And so then the page next to it also was traditional inking, and there's a word of Hindi in there that my cousin helped me translate. there's a
This
magic.
right here. Yeah, what
Yep.
is that?
Oh gosh, put me on the spot. I know what it means. It means like basically like return,
Okay.
like if you were to
That's how I
call
so
like
so that's why his sword comes back from. I love that
right.
flump. I don't know
Yeah.
that I've seen that onomatopoeia before, but I like it, dude.
I thought like, maybe this will be a recurring thing. Like he gets separated from his sword and reunited with it. And if that's the case, maybe it should have like, like Spider-Man has his thwip and Wolverine has his snicked. Maybe
Yeah.
this guy has his floomp.
Yeah, I like it, dude. It's unique.
Yeah. So
I
here,
love this panel,
colors.
dude. Just the blood splatter because
Oh,
it doesn't look like it's not gory. You know, like when you see blood, sometimes it can have like that goriness to it, but it definitely
right.
feels like it's ink. You know what I mean? And so it doesn't really have the. I mean, it's blood, but I really like that specific panel. That one really stands out to me.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Sometimes less is more.
Right.
I don't know if you can see this here, but look, I have the actual. I
Oh
did three
hell yeah!
different ink splatters, and then I just picked the best one. And yeah, I think both of those pages were done traditionally.
Love the texture that you get in the cape. So this was colored also digitally because it
Yeah,
kind
that's
of is
all
kind of looks
digital.
like your other. So these ones are done digitally too, then, right? Like
Which
this
one?
one.
Well, it started as a watercolor and then it was finished digitally. Yeah, I would
Okay.
say like 80% of that one is digital. It's not really. There are some that are like fully painted and others that are mostly digital.
See, that's where I can't even tell the difference sometimes.
Yeah,
Like that's awesome.
that
Like
always
so
makes me
this.
happy.
Yeah, this one. See, like this one looks to me like you did it traditionally, like with colored pencils almost because of the texture of the cape.
Well, a lot of the textures I use are done traditionally and then overlaid on top of the digital colors.
Okay.
So, there is like actual, like, sometimes it is crayon, sometimes it's colored pencil, sometimes it's watercolor, sometimes acrylic paint. And then like you either scan that in or photograph it. I've even like photographed like coffee before and like used that as a texture. I've used tiles on the floor. I've used drywall. I just kind of pull from wherever.
That's dope. I love this panel within how the string of the cape is going in and your true battle lies ahead for you must face the beast within. I love this, dude. This is
Oh,
awesome.
thanks. Yeah, I really like the idea of the string on the cape. It made it feel like a kind of cheap Halloween costume, which
Yeah.
I just liked the idea of like this omnipotent being, this god, basically like wearing some Party City thing from October.
Yeah. Now we got the Theo portal.
Yeah,
Talk
the
about
Theo
this, sir.
portal. Yeah, so this one, the title page, there's a comic artist I really like named Jamie Chase.
Okay.
And he, as like an exercise, would do this thing where he would draw in inverse. Like he would use white for the areas that were supposed to be shadows, and then he would use black for the areas that are supposed to be white. And he'd do the whole thing inverted, and then he'd photograph it and then invert it in Photoshop as just like an exercise to recognize light and dark to make sure he had
Mm.
a good understanding of it. And so I totally stole that from him here. And like, because I also thought like this would be a good way to save time. If you have a page that's supposed to be mostly black, what if you just kept the paper white and you drew in all the black areas for the white areas, then you invert it. And so this was done with colored pencil on white paper and then inverted.
Oh, that's fucking interesting, dude.
And then you have that cityscape there.
I love this, dude. This is so good.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think that
Oh,
lightning strike and all that is very like I was I think I had just come off of reading Dark Knight Returns when doing this because of you have the 16 panel grid and kind of that color palette, at least for this page. This story has the most experimentation than any other in the book. So you'll see the stories, you'll see the art varying wildly here. The cityscapes are based on the view from a window at work back when we went to the office. And so I like went up to like the 14th floor and took a photo out the window. And that was my reference for that. I did take some liberties with the buildings,
mhm.
but yeah, that's where that was. And then the bottom panels are done with traditional ink. And by the way, this story is all a loose retelling of a Russian fairy tale called
Okay.
Vasilisa the Beautiful. And you'll see later there's like a witch character that's very reminiscent of the Baba Yaga, and that's all intentional. Yeah, so the page on the left here is a great example of all the techniques being all over the place. The top four panels are all traditional ink. That
Mhm.
second panel, the background is inked in Illustrator, and the figures are inked by hand. You'll see like all the rendering on that panel is just done with the color. And that was something I was stealing from Lynn Varley. One of my favorite things about that era of like Frank Miller's work was like how much heavy lifting the color was allowed to do.
Yes.
Like there's even a panel in The Dark Knight where it's just if you look at the inks, it's a plain white panel. And then when she colored it, it's an explosion. And so
Yeah.
like he just left her free to do that. And so like here, if you actually look at the ink work, there's nothing there. There's almost no detail there. It's just all the digital coloring. And I think the style of the rendering and all of that, I had old Fleischer's Superman cartoons in mind here. I had a lot. I pulled from a lot of different points
I
of
can see
inspiration.
that. I can see the Fletcher Superman cartoons in here now.
Yeah, like kind of a dark, smooth, kind of eerie
Yeah, they're
quality.
so unique. Those cartoons are like crazy. I'm so glad
They're
they're like
beautiful.
re-releasing them.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they I think they man, I forgot. I think it's coming out this summer, but they're releasing the collection on Blu-ray of the
Oh, wow.
entire run of it. Yeah. I don't hopefully it doesn't take too much away from like the way it was shown because sometimes they release those old cartoons and they try to polish them too much.
Oh, I hope not. I mean, those cartoons were so high budget. Like it would be stupid to try to fix them. You know, like
Yeah.
there are some things that need cleanup and need a polish, but those cartoons really stand up, especially on a technical level.
I have faith. I think they won't screw it up because I feel like DC animation for the most part, like what they've done, like they're pretty good. So I'm hoping
That's
that. I
true.
mean, I think it's cool to see that it's going to be released because I always used to like. I don't remember where I saw them, but I remember seeing them as a kid and being like, "This is weird," but it was really cool.
Yeah, yeah. I think like at some point, did they like I don't know, they must have been cheap to acquire at some point because they used to have like in the grocery store, like near the checkouts, like the little like cheap cartoon videos that kids would beg their
Yeah, I
moms
remember
to
those.
buy them. And like there would always be like old classic like Popeye and Superman. And it's like,
Yeah,
how are these so cheap? But
yeah.
I'm not complaining.
Oh, I wasn't complaining either. I
Yeah.
remember those exact tapes you're talking about too.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I haven't thought about those in years.
Yeah. So that's another page. There's a lot of traditional inking. You see an old 1950s style sci-fi robot. With character designs like that for that robot named Sven Seven, what I had in mind was not necessarily to do something super unique, like, oh, I've never seen that before, but rather use a visual shorthand to make it feel familiar. Like
Mhm.
you look at it and you almost feel like you already know that robot. I guess an intentionally generic, familiar design for the sake of clarity.
I love these panels right here too.
Yeah, this is her traveling to another dimension.
This is another phenomenal double page. I gotta know how this was done.
Oh, okay.
Was this
Yeah.
a mix again of traditional and digital?
The actual spread, the whole forest scene is 100% digital.
Oh, okay.
The figures were done by hand. And so like the whole falling thing, I got really I like fell into the rabbit hole here, pun intended, of like getting the poses right for the whole falling motion. Because it's like hard to pose. You can't do it while like someone's like on the floor or something. And so I was talking to Enzo Garza of Gut Ghost fame, and like he actually today's his birthday. I don't know when this is going to be released, but today's his birthday, so it's kind of funny. He's coming up, but he gifted me once those action figures that are meant to be like art mannequins.
Uh-huh.
So like they're superposable and they kind of come with this stand so you can do like the flying or falling poses. And so I used that to like do the 4 different poses of her falling as reference. And then like I drew them with, here they're only silhouettes, but in the original drawings, they were fully rendered just to make sure that everything made sense and everything lined up properly.
Oh
But
wow, okay.
I just wanted, for the sake of motion, I thought silhouette made more sense. But yeah, I did the full rendering on those initially. And then you go back into more traditional stuff. And here I started playing, we talked about crayons. I used some black crayons and black Crayola colored pencils to scribble some gray area on top of traditional inks for some of this. There's other parts that I think are just digitally painted, like those streaks in the sky. And there's the witch that is reminiscent of the Baba Yaga from Russian fairy tales. And now I guess we have the now infamous use of crayon.
Yeah. So is this a photograph of a drawing? How did you do this part?
Hold on, let me cheat and look at the binder and see if I can find the page because I'm not 100% sure. And
Okay.
like I seem to remember this stuff so poorly. Oh, it looks like I faked it. The drawing is intact. So I think I must have photographed it and then digitally ripped it.
Okay, that's crazy. All right.
I guess
It
I
looks like a photograph that you took, you know, but yeah,
now
that's pretty dope,
now that
isn't
I
it?
see it, I'm remembering what I did was I did it that way because I was so afraid of the rip not going exactly the way I wanted it to go, because it was narratively, it was supposed to show like this family portrait drawn by Helga Hale, the little girl in the picture who's the grown woman, the rest of the story, and
Right.
her feeling separated from her father when he disappeared. And so I needed to rip it just right that he'd be separate. And it was like, if I draw this and then I rip it wrong, I don't want to waste the all of 5 minutes I took drawing this crayon drawing again. So let me just do it digitally, which probably ended up wasting more time anyway. So shows what I know. And then on the next page,
Yeah.
the top four, no, the first three panels were done digitally, but then actually here, I don't know if can you see this? There's
Yeah.
I guess there was some done by colored pencil. I don't remember, but then that fourth panel, you have the stuffed toy lion that I did by hand on brown packing paper with markers and paint and colored pencil. And then the bottom panels with the video game
Nice.
controller. I'm really proud of this here. So there's this whiskey bottle, and its label, it's called Rose Gold Unicorn, is the fake brand. And so like basically like the idea in the story is this character Helga feels like I did when I was in my mid to late 20s, where it's like I just wasted all this time I had to do something important or something meaningful, and I wasted it on. I was never really into video games, but I used it as a easy shorthand for a way to waste time easily.
Yeah.
Uh, so like you got video games. I definitely did waste some time in my 20s with alcohol, and and so that was the point being made there. But I was really happy with how the fake brand of whiskey came out.
Yeah, you're good at logos, dude. I'll tell you
Oh,
that.
thanks.
You
I
are
appreciate it.
phenomenal with logos. I mean, I love that too. You're like you're cutting off your own art, you know, like you drew the rest of this too, like in
Right.
and the whole image. Like that's really cool, dude.
Well, so a way I think of doing the art for comics, at least the way I do them, is it's almost like shooting coverage in a movie, and like you're shooting all the footage and then you're editing it down later, and so you like draw it knowing that not all of it's going to end up in the final product. Like I have fully rendered paintings in this book that are not here because when I was done I realized they didn't fit anywhere in the narrative properly, and
Yeah.
so like they're just sitting alone in this binder, never to be seen. I can hold them up now, but like this one never, that's nowhere in the book.
Hmm.
Where you have
Oh,
like a chess
wow.
piece of a unicorn and this like snarling green lion. And it was because I didn't think it looked enough like a lion and it didn't really fit in the story anymore. So I got rid of it. This is one of my favorite pages in the whole book. The one where there's two Helgas facing each other. This one was done with colored pencil on black or on brown packing paper. Then I took a photo of it and digitally painted on top of it, and it changed a lot in the digital form. I'm trying to find the original somewhere. Here it is. Yeah, the original is like this here. So I definitely modified plenty digitally,
Yeah, you like you brightened it up. Definitely
brightened
for
it
sure.
up, but
Yeah.
like full on painted white in the middle
Yeah.
there, where like it just wasn't there in the original. Because a lot of times, a lot of these decisions I make are based on like cost and risk, and like it's like, okay, well, if I splash that much white paint on the page, like that's just kind of throwing away that money when I could easily do that digitally. So I can think about that. And then it's also like, also if you're willing to smear white paint all over the thing you did, you risk losing what you like about that piece. And so digital gives you a little more freedom that way. So it's like a good starting point, and then like they're finished digitally
Yeah, I think it's
all
like
the
really
time.
important to like, you know, talk about how much you can do different with your art now, like where you like you're creating the art separately, but then you can change it digitally to where you still have the original how you originally perceived it. You know, like that's technology like that they couldn't do back then, you know, like so like the
Yeah.
way you're able to just experiment so freely, you know, I think is I mean it's so evident in your work and it's evident in the book and getting to hear you like and see the pieces like as they originally were. Like I wouldn't have guessed that that's what it looked like originally, you know?
Right. Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that they didn't have that access to technology earlier, because this is something that kind of drove me nuts with comics, especially when I was a teen. I would look at comics and think, like, with then current printing technologies, we're talking like early 2000s, late 90s, you already could do like a fully painted book or a mixed media book. You could do a comic in pastels, you could do a comic in colored pencil, and everyone was still sticking to the archaic workflow of pencils, inks, colors. I just didn't understand why. And at the time, I got so militant about it that I was like, oh, inking is a waste of time, and inking is I have so much appreciation for inking now because like once you try it, you realize how much there really is to it.
Yeah.
But at the time, I had, like, as a teenager, I had no respect for inking. I just saw it as an unnecessary step in a process because like you don't need it to reproduce the artwork on the finished book anymore. Now I can respect it, but I still choose not to ink most of the time.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
being
look, there's so many tools, like why not use them, you know?
right, right. And like I understand, like there's different reasons, different motivations people have for making comics, and sometimes they want to uphold those traditions of like pure cartooning of, you know, that clear line of you know, from brain to hand to ink to paper, and like then the finished page is it, and that's everything there. Everything that's going to see print is on that page, and I really respect that. It's not really a strength of mine, you know, and you also have to play to your strengths and what works best for you.
Mhm.
Yeah, teenage me would say inking is stupid and a waste of time, and current me is more like, no, no, you do it if that's what works for you. But it's not
Yeah.
really my strength. That being said, that whole page with the skull was all traditionally inked.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of white out there. This is one of the bigger moments in the book. Probably my favorite spread for the book here, and most of it's digital, but you will see like I did do some of it with marker and packing paper and paint and all that stuff. Um, so like the images on the right there, where you see the close-ups of the figures
Yes.
and the unicorn and the lion hobby horses and those other images inspired by tarot cards. Those were all done by hand, but then the constellations were done digitally. I got some like Halloween decoration skull I was using as a photo reference, and so like that's what you get on that page. I think the two main drawings in the middle of the lion and the unicorn are digital, but who knows? Maybe in this notebook somewhere there's a there's a
There's a
drawing.
drawing in there, yeah.
Yeah,
No, this
there's
is a great image, and I love that you use that for the cover of the book too.
oh, thanks. Yeah, and it's the same theme like for the cover of the book, but I drew it again. There is another, so it's not the same image zoomed in, believe it or
Oh
not.
yeah. All right. Yeah, I didn't even.
I don't know why I chose to do it that way. Maybe I thought I could do better. So this is the original before all the digital touch ups and stuff.
Love it.
So
That's awesome.
yeah, it was a lot of planning, a lot of doing and redoing. Yeah, this whole thing, the lion and the unicorn, that's all stuff from like the royal coat of arms of Scotland. And then like there was this old poem like, that I put the lyrics to, the words to on that middle panel, the big middle panel where the lion is eating the unicorn.
Yeah.
And so it was like this whole thing. There's a lot of recurring images and symbols and overlapping things. And this is all stuff that made sense at 3 a.m. is all I can really say. Like I would stay up all night and I would be working on this stuff, and I would try to go on autopilot and see like any connections that could be made. And like I would go for long walks, and like, you know, I remember like going for walks in Queens, and it'd be like, you know, past midnight, and the rain had just fallen, and like there's this bodega shut down, and then like there's this little kid ride of like a unicorn out front. And so it's like, okay, well now that unicorn's going in, and like, oh, like there's this lion statue in front of this Indian restaurant, so now that's going in. And like, you know, I was just kind of pulling from anywhere and everywhere for
That's
these
awesome,
stories.
dude. That's awesome to hear, you know, like, cause like I mean, just like they say, write what you know too. So to kind of like just be walking the streets in the middle of the night, and I can imagine there's other interesting shit that's happening in the middle of the night in New
Yeah.
York, you know?
Oh
So
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
cool, dude. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get to it later, but the second issue, there's like a scene in like a coffee shop, and like that was definitely inspired by some, at least on some level, inspired by some weird things you'll see at an all night diner in New York. That final shot of the cityscape, the very end of the book, right there at the bottom, that was another one, brown packing paper, colored pencil, marker. And again, it's the same shot from the window from work. And so it's just kind of like this circular narrative where I wanted it to end on the same image. It began on, like, it started with a storm and it ends with the rising sun on the same shot of the city.
Well, that was Dishoom #1, dude. Great book. It's your first comic book that you did by yourself. I'll also got to mention that. Dude, I had a blast going through this with you, and I'm definitely excited to go through Dishoom #2 with you. For everybody listening and watching, make sure you follow Sam J Royale. Go pick up his book. All his links are down below, and same with Comic Con's links. This is a blast.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, and so this copy you have is actually sold out, and so I had to reprint issue 1. It's exactly the same, except it does give a little preview of the next issue's cover on the last page. And it says second printing.
Nice.
Just to differentiate it. So you got one of the originals that are all gone now.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. All right, man. Well, we'll do this again.
Yeah, definitely. Really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.